I started this thing I call Platinum Club parties, right? And let me tell you where I got the idea. I got the idea from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, nice.
And you know, with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you have to find this golden ticket. So I came up with this platinum ticket. But the only way to get a platinum ticket was you had to either maintain a certain academic level and behavior level in the class for the term, or you had to have made a major increase from one term to a next. That stuff came out of my pocket. But because I saw how it motivated them, it was worth it.
Thanks for tuning to the Sheefan Show. Remember, most upgrades and add-ons are just adding more noise and clutter to your operations efficiency. Emetra gives you the truth instead. If you're done guessing and ready to see clearly, join the early access at prosperumdigital.com.au/Emetra Early Access. Our special guest today is Chandra Kydd, who's the founder and CEO of Smart Kydd Concepts, an educational consulting firm based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. An award-winning adult educator, author, and motivational speaker, she holds a bachelor's degree in public relations and communications and a master's degree in adult education and training. Her journey in education began as a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer, and she's passionate about empowering diverse learners through online courses, workshops, and coaching. Chandra specializes in helping adult learners and immigrants achieve academic and personal success through accessible, culturally responsive learning experiences. Welcome, Chandra.
Hey, thank you so much for having me here. This is a wonderful opportunity, and I'm excited.
Yeah, no worries. I thank you for hopping onto the pod. I'm really interested how you are, I guess, changing how things being done with adult education, considering there's a saying that a lot of times, especially how we all been growing up and been taught usually after maybe high school, college, or university, that's kind of when education ends. But I'd love to hear a bit more how do you end up with this concept of focusing on adult education?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned in the bio there, and I appreciate you, giving all that wonderful, great information. I really and truly was not. I never grew up thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be a teacher." It
Mm,
really and truly, my mindset was, I am going to be this great PR person, and I'm going to go and I'm going to hit corporate, and I'm just going to be this big, mouthpiece for just megastars or whatever. And I saw this poster on the wall in college, and it kept Peace Corps, and I had never heard of this thing. Like, what is a Peace Corps? And I went to, I honestly, it just kept calling my name, and to the point where I couldn't ignore it. And there was a recruiter on, and I decided to go, and he described this great adventure. And so I was like, okay, well, I could go for an adventure, right? So I went overseas to this place. When I say it was so out of the box, this is so unlike me. I'm just totally going somewhere I've never been. And I got there, and the minister of technology literally hands me a set of keys to a multi-million-dollar building that had never been open. It was a learning resource center. And and I was like, what do you want me to do with these keys? And he's like, just don't burn it down. And I'm like, "Are you sure?" Because I'm like 20. I think at the time I'm like maybe 23, 20. I'm like young, so I'm 23, 24. And so I'm like, "Oh my goodness, how much pressure?" But at the same time, I'm the kind of person where I don't like to be micromanaged. So his hands-off approach was right up my alley. So I was able to teach in classes, and I started teaching 5 to 8-year-olds and adults. And I knew quickly, I can't do these kids. I cannot deal with the children. I love the adults immediately. And so when I came back to the US, I decided to stay in adult education. And I've learned so much in this area. And what makes it so joyous is because when you're dealing with children, children have to go to school. But when you're dealing with adults, they're there by choice or maybe some hardship. So they need love. And this is one of the things that really I try to be outside of the box with, is the love aspect and the motivation aspect, because they will they will stop. They will quit. Life will take over, and they will get
mm,
sidetracked and lose focus, or just get fed up or frustrated or overwhelmed. So that's a big part of what I do. It is not just teaching a skill. I make sure that I am always incorporating motivation, always incorporating critical thinking activities, because
nice.
that's something that's not in a lot of curriculum. They want you to teach, you'll teach reading, you'll teach certain, skills and so forth in a specific subject, but a lot of schools are not focusing on us teaching critical thinking, things that employers want. these students to know when they finish whatever credential they're going for.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
very good point. That's a very good point, especially like you say, critical thinking, because now with how technology is moving so fast, the environment's moving so fast in today's world, it's like whatever you learn maybe in those early years in like whether it be in high school, whether you left college early, whatever it is like there needs to be a way to how to like consolidate all this information and then use it for your advantage, but also for your employer's advantage. So like I guess for your side, so when you wanted to focus on adults, like what was the biggest issue that you saw in the current ecosystem at that time that made you go like, you know what, there's something missing here that I really need to help these guys out?
I think a big part of, I think because the fact that we're dealing with adults, people assume they know how to be a student. And if you've been out of school for years, you don't remember how to study. You don't remember, how to take notes. You don't remember how to like listen and also see what the teacher's doing and demonstrating. And so and especially if you've been out of school for years, and then with adult ed, you may be, say, for example, a 50-something-year-old student sitting next to a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old. So you're like, there's intimidation there. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting next to a youngster. So there's all of those different dynamics that make a lot of adults very uncomfortable. Not to mention if we're talking about, and I specifically help people with my daytime job with getting their GED. So then there's these reasons of why they might have dropped out of school in the first place. That's a whole nother bag of
Hmm.
like maybe insecurity and maybe even some shame of why they didn't finish in the first place. So this is something we have to make sure that well, at least I try to make sure that I'm always reminding them of why they started and why they need to finish, and let this be the time that they see it through. Yeah.
That's a very good point actually, because like I think about it, right, like there's a lot of education systems provided out there, but it seems like your help, because I think like think about community colleges or those like free pieces of information you find online. But I think I like what you're saying is that you get deep into the roots of like what's hindering and what's blocking somebody from learning further as well. Because you can feed everybody. I mean, it's the saying, you can have the most intellectual person in the room, but if they're not emotionally, mentally sound in that sense,
Right.
it's kind of like that's a massive bottleneck in itself. And that will transition and like translate out to other areas like the workplace, or later on when they do get stuck on something, they cannot regulate it properly. It could potentially just explode in the workplace, or like sit down the track when trying to get their next level of like learning sorted.
Right. And if you think about it, I mean, because if you don't even incorporating soft skills, like being intentional of creating opportunities for students to learn soft skills, you assume because they're an adult, they know how to manage their time. You assume because they're an adult, they know how to work with other people and collaborate and communicate effectively. And the truth is, sometimes these folks don't have these skills. And so now you're now preparing them for an exam or certification. But if you're not making sure to incorporate even technology, because I have some students who, if I say, hey, I want you guys to join, Remind so I can text message you, and they're like, and I'm like, open up a text message. And I literally have to take their phone and show them where the icon is for their text
Yeah, yeah,
messages.
yeah.
So things like, so now we're putting these students in a scenario where they have to take an exam for a certification or a credential that's most likely computer based, but they can't even open a text message on their own device. So this is where institutions really need to make sure that they're making the connections of catering to the entire need of the student, not just are they learning math or reading or science or whatever, but can they function once they leave that institution? Because I guarantee you, no company is going to say, hey, what was your score on that exam? They want to know if the place is on fire, what are you going to do? They want to know if
Yeah.
things start breaking and falling apart, how are you going to handle it? Are you going to be level-handed, level-headed? Are you going to be able to work with your coworkers? And even if I take you from one department to a next, can you transition smoothly? Can you transition when we update our software and our hardware? Are you going to fall apart because we got new technology in the company? So things like that. And this is one of the areas that I see a lot of institutions are really they really need to strengthen this area, because we may be getting them credentials, but they
Mm.
don't have what they need to function in the workplace. And that's
Exactly.
what companies want. And at the end of the day, that's what students want because this is their bread and butter.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I think the soft skill part is very important. Of course, if I was going to get like a heart surgery, I would love someone who's actually like pretty skills and everything, or somebody's like upgrading my software, my company. You're right. It's interesting. I have a friend of mine. I actually catch up with him for dinner later on this week. He had to move companies after reskilling himself from being a chef into a software engineer. They put him under a team leader who's a very introverted software engineer, like not micromanaging, but more like he's like assumes that the new graduates know what to do right away. He didn't have any much of like people skills. For what it sounds like. So he finally either tried to transfer teams, or if it didn't work out, he moved to a different organization itself. But it's interesting how you know, like you're right. If you're not prepared, but if you're the person maybe only available in that team or that company, you need to really figure ways how to then, I guess the word is balance, or how to like quickly adapt to having the soft skills as well as the hard skills. Because this guy's a fantastic programmer from what it sounds like, but
Mhm.
he didn't know how to lead a team. And I'm sure the leadership team shouldn't put him as a team leader. They should just kept him in the back of the office where he preferred just to code and just let it be from there. Yeah.
And even that what you're saying, now he's being put into a new position, a new role that is really outside of his personality. And once again, this is why I'm always so the subjects that I focus on are reading language and social studies. So I'm teaching geography, civics, history. I love that stuff. Love, love, love teaching that stuff. And so, but and this is one of the things when I'm talking about going on a college tour, and this is one of the things that I want to talk to the staff about is the importance of making sure that you're always in core. Doesn't matter what your core subject is, finding ways to incorporate those critical thinking skills, communication skills, because if your students don't have them now that they are in the workplace environment. So I'll give you an example. You mentioned a doctor, right? Person going in the medical field, right? And they may be a heart surgeon, right? And they're good at all of the different the workings of the heart, how to do the surgery with a very fast turnaround and recovery. All of that stuff is A plus plus, but they have terrible bedside manner. So they're like simply telling you every second you're gonna die, and they're not very kind, and they don't communicate well. They don't explain what they're gonna do to you in the surgery. They don't know how to work with the other staff members who are gonna be in that surgical team. So these are the skills that people need, and schools need to understand that students need more than just the topics, the skills, the curriculum. They need these other skills. They need to come in with communication and these soft skills because those things are important too. Because if
Of
I have a
course.
doctor, my doctor can't even talk to me like a patient with kindness and sympathy and explain things to me in a way that I'll understand. Well, then we start to wonder, is this really a great doctor? Because I want you to be able to do the surgery, but I also want to be able to understand what it is that you're going to be doing to me in the surgery.
Mm,
And when you talk to me, you make me feel at ease and comfortable.
a very good
That's
point.
important. Yeah,
That's a very good
yeah.
point. So how with your side and how you do things as well, how then you help institutions, organizations, or even your students or your clients, how do you help them convey and quantify that, hey, if you were to improve like the critical thinking, the soft skill aspect, that would translate to, um, reducing bottlenecks, revenue leaks, that kind of thing, or improving workplace performance. How do you help them convey that performance increase by focusing in these areas?
Right. And I'm the type of person, I'm a big storyteller. I love telling stories and anecdotes and scenarios because I believe that when people visualize these things, they understand it and they see it more clearly. Because it's one thing to spout a bunch of statistics and say, okay, if incorporate this into your, training for your staff, you're going to see a 30%, numbers, numbers, numbers. But when you start coming up with scenarios about how you might have more collaboration amongst your staff, and that might make the bond so that now there's higher productivity. If you're able to give scenarios that people can understand in a real way, people start to see it and understand it better, and they're more prone and willing to participate and partake in that. So with my students, I'll give you an example. I'll say I want to have my students do an activity activity or like a presentation, and I have a student that's really, really introverted. They don't like talking in front of people. By me now telling them stories and scenarios of how this skill, say now they're in the workplace and they have a coworker or a supervisor and they're having issues, but yet they're so introverted that they never speak up for themselves. They never advocate for themselves. And so when they start thinking that way, like, oh yeah, this is something that I'm really going to need in real life, then people are more receptive to doing it and participating in it. And I also am very big on allowing others to come in and give testimonials. So I'll have even other students come in and say, okay, they went through this scenario with me. They took this course. They did this exercise with me. And as a result, they were able to now apply that to a real world situation. And that now makes students like, oh, yeah, okay, well, if they can do it, then I can do it. And now I see the benefit of it. Because that's one thing you have to do with adults. You have to constantly reassure them that what you're teaching them is going to be relevant to the real world. Because if they
Mm,
don't understand why they're learning it, I don't know if you ever remember growing up in school, you ever said, well, when am I going to use this kind of math? When am
yeah,
I
like
ever
the
going to, when am I ever going to
Pythagoras theorem kind of thing, or
Pythagorean theorem? And
yeah,
like, when am I
yeah.
ever going to quote Shakespeare? And, because you don't see the value and where you'll actually use it, you're not interested in learning it. So if you now create this constant scenario and reinforce with examples and anecdotes of how it's real world application knowledge, people start to understand and see the value in it, and they don't mind making sure that they, as well as others around them, are more equipped to handle these out of the box situations that could occur at any time, especially in the
Mm.
workplace.
No, very cool. I like for what you're saying is that you're helping your students, you're teaching them how to think and how to apply this versus just what to do and what to say. Because there's a lot of things where, like, yes, there's some cases where you kind of like to regurgitate some stuff. Not, I mean, that's part of the whole process there. But I like how you're helping them also, like, asking themselves, internally, intrinsically, like, why does this work this way? How does it connect to this other? How does the dots connect to each other? The kind of thing. So that is very cool. That's very interesting, actually.
And I love on really and truly, and when I say that, and my dad's from Georgia. I'm a Southern background girl, so hospitality is major for me.
Nice.
So, just at my house, if you come to my house, the first thing my parents want to know, wait, you want something to eat, you want something to drink. So that's kind of ingrained, in my DNA. So I feed my students every day.
That's amazing.
And I've
Oh
been
gosh.
doing it for and as a matter of fact, this morning I made grits. I don't know if you like grits.
Yeah, I tried. I was visiting that before.
I made a humongous pot of grits and a humongous pot of oatmeal. So I treated them to breakfast. So, and I had all the little fixings, the cheese, and I had the raisins and the cranberries and the brown sugar. So like every single day I am feeding them. And the benefit of that is that because I am loving on them, they are willing to accept anything I offer, knowledge, wisdom, advice, because I'm feeding their body. And because I now feed their body, they're exposing their mind, and they're so receptive. And even when they feel like they want to quit, they don't want to let me down. So they're showing up
Mm,
anyway.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're showing up anyway. And even when and as a matter of fact, and I joke about this all the time, where some adult educators are worried about students getting students to stay. My problem is getting them to leave. I can't get them to leave. They keep coming back. They're like, Miss Kidd, you make that good coffee, Miss Kidd. You got that good hot chocolate, Miss Kidd. So they don't want to, they literally don't want to leave, even though they passed their exams. They're ready for the next set, the next level. They don't want to leave because the love environment that we've been able to create as a family, because I call us family. We're family. So these are the things that really make all the difference in an adult classroom. When people feel welcome, they want to be there even when they're tired, even when they're exhausted, they're stressed out, they just got off the work shift, and they're coming because they want to be in the presence of that classroom.
Yeah, Mama Bear kid feeding everybody. Nice.
And even when they're not my students, because they heard the food was so good, and I never say no, I never turn anyone away. Come on in, get a cup of coffee, come on. And before you know it, now they're striving to get to my class, you know.
Awesome.
these are the dynamics in the environment that, if any instructor or teacher, and it doesn't have to even be just adult. Even when I taught middle school, I did this for my middle school kids. They came to class and they wanted to be in, they stayed the whole time. They weren't trying to get out early because they felt the love and they knew that I sincerely cared about them and their well-being, and I cared about them more than just a test. And that's the message we gotta. I care about you more than just a grade. And when you give that kind of mindset to a student, they want to be there even when they don't feel like being there.
I love that. I remember seeing some like clips on YouTube, like guys and like girls where they've excelled in their careers. As soon as they see their old teacher or their old coach or trainer, they kind of like, they kind of revert back to that young person and remembers them as like, oh, and they point, like, oh, this person's the one actually um believed in me. But they didn't like, soften them, or they didn't like, like baby them, but it's more like they actually like they cared for the students, but they actually help them like see the potential. I think the best one's like I can't forget his name, but he's a English soccer player, and he saw his old coach after like many years of being successful, and he immediately like almost you see his face like reverted back to the young high school junior soccer like tryout, and he's like, oh, this guy believed in me, that kind of thing. Or like another lady where like they I know it's a bit controversial, but you see those like talk shows like Oprah or like Ellen, where they like invite the old teachers back on stage, that kind of thing, after like what, maybe like 5, 10, 20 years, etc. And like one of them was like, oh my gosh, you're still alive? That's amazing. But
I
they
think
really
as
love
a
that.
matter of fact, I think I just saw something on social media with LeBron James with an old coach that he found
Mm,
out was homeless or something, and he
wow.
like bought him a fully furnished a condo or something like that, and because he found out about it and remembered how much that coach was like a father figure. And he just like secretly went out and just, bought this place and furnished it and just showed that love back to that coach. And the truth is, because educators are like, I call them undercover superheroes because they make such a difference. And I'm talking about all levels. I'm talking elementary, middle school, high school, adults. A great teacher can make such a difference in the life of an individual where they lack hope or even lack vision, because some students have no idea which way to go. They're just in school, they enrolled and hope they figure it out. But sometimes they need that good uh teacher or advisor or counselor to kind of give them that little bit of nudge and encouragement. And it makes all the difference. And it just takes their life to a whole new level. It really is a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
And even when the teacher in their mind, they had a conversation with a student and they forgot about the conversation. But the student like never forgot it. Like 10 years later, they still remember that thing the teacher said that made so much difference and impact in their life. And these are the stories we hear about all the time. But unfortunately, teachers are not always as recognized as they should be for a lot of the contributions that they do. I've seen teachers, pay for students' lunch,
Yeah.
or in case in adult ed, I've seen a lot of teachers pay for students' tests because the student can't afford it. And I've had students that were coming out of the prison system, students that were in the foster care system, students that were homeless. Oh my goodness, students that were homeless. And they're coming with backgrounds and baggage that would just absolutely break your heart. And so when they come to school, they want to be in a place that they feel comfortable and safe and not feel like they're going to be shunned or ridiculed or looked down upon. If maybe they're an adult, but they have a second grade education. That's hard.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
hard. That's really, really, really hard. So you got to have a knack for this, especially with adult ed. You got to have a knack because those students do not have to be there. They could leave at any time.
Wow, that's a very good point. And I guess my other question is that, from what you've seen as well, because, educators, teachers, whoever else in that space, they do so much, but there's like almost like where I'm looking at right now, my mind is like, it's a very fine line where they could also break apart themselves because they're taking on not just the teaching and education part, but also, almost like emotionally and also coaching in some cases, those like difficult students. is there anything you maybe see now, like in 2025, where the ecosystem or like maybe the local governments maybe might still be missing out something to help support educators to help them continue further? Because I saw another thing on social media a while ago as well. It's on the lines of there's a picture of pizza and Coca-Cola.
Mhm.
The line was like, growing up, I realized the pizza parties actually might have been paid from my own teacher's salary. There wasn't any like funding for it. There wasn't any support. He or she probably did it out of their own pocket despite struggling themselves financially. So like what do you reckon? What do you see the future like for 2025 in this space?
Yeah. And I'll speak on different levels because like I said, I was in the middle school and even with adult ed, a lot of teachers come out of their own pocket for a lot. Materials,
Mm,
incentives. So like when kids get little, I know sometimes like kids have like certain teachers have little treasure boxes. So when the kids are good, they get to pull out the treasure box. Schools don't supply those things. This is teachers. So like when they're having like a little reward, things like, 'cause I'll give you an example. When I taught middle school, and I'm all about motivation, even at the middle school, I started this thing I call Platinum Club parties, right? And let me tell you where I got the idea. I got the idea from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
oh, nice.
And with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you have to find this golden ticket. So I came up with this platinum ticket. But the only way to get a platinum ticket was you had to either maintain a certain academic level and behavior level in the class for the term, or you had to have made a major increase from one term to a next. So I literally went all out and got this really fancy paper, silvery paper, and put their name on it. It was really, really cool. And so, and we would do this after school, like party. Like literally I had this big old party speaker, and the school was very strict on uniform, so they got to wear regular clothes and pizza and snacks and all of this type of stuff. That stuff came out of my pocket. But because I saw how it motivated them, it was worth it. You know what I mean? And when at the end of the year, because they were striving so hard, their scores were really high when it came to testing. So that's something that I really do think it would be great for schools to support teachers more in these things, even if it were a reimbursement program or something like that. If teachers could
Sure.
receive their receipt, they used to do it where they would give you up to $250 like on your tax return if you were a teacher. But that's not the same. The amount of money they spend throughout the year on the little pencils for Valentine's Day and little incentives and things like that, books, tests for adults,
Mm,
snacks, things like that. It gets very, very costly and very expensive. And so, these teachers are not reimbursed for these things. They're doing it simply out of the kindness of their heart. I had a coworker, he's retired now, and he would literally buy students, books, study prep books, and GED level fancy Texas Instrument calculators. Those things are expensive. And
yeah,
he
yeah.
never wanted it back. And so I used to joke with him. I'm saying, listen, they almost, you're having to pay to work here because he's giving so much out of his own pocket. But and that's the beauty of a lot of adult educators is because they feel like they're planting a seed that's going to grow, even if it doesn't come back to them in form of money. They feel good knowing that they're helping this person go from maybe just incarcerated to free to now getting a career. Or maybe they didn't have their credentials to now they have the credentials and they're working in their field. Now they went from struggling to now they're entrepreneurs with their own businesses. So I think a lot of educators are being compensated in a way that's more mental and emotional. They just feel good about it, even though they are not being compensated monetarily by the schools or the district or the state or whatever, which I think, there needs to be some type of incentive or something to kind of do a little bit better job of recognizing and honoring these teachers for those high levels of, going above and beyond like that, especially in adult ed. And I have to say that. I have to say, especially in adult ed, because when you hear a lot about teacher recognition, it's usually for K through 12, not as much for adult You hardly hear about awards for adult educators, recognition for adult educators. A lot of it is for the kids, educators of the kids. Not saying they don't deserve it, but you can't leave the adult educators out as well.
Good point there as well. And I guess, I mean, we don't want to like sound like we're pointing fingers or expecting, like governments or someone else to like come and swoop in to save the day. But this podcast is mainly about founders and business owners who are doing something disruptive and or counterintuitive for the industries. Do you see anything like how to, I guess, like a better term, fix this part? Because I like what you said about emotional, benefits and returns, but that won't pay the bills, that kind of thing. So do you see any like from your perspective, like with all everything you're doing right now, anything you can do to also raise awareness or like get like outside investors or maybe some sort of like program like VC funding, anything like that, or investors to come in like, hey, how to support this like system or how to support Smart Kydd and help it grow so it can support other adult educators as well.
Right. I think partnerships is definitely a big thing. Having companies come in and assist, especially with, like I said, adult students, because if you think about a lot of the benefits for a young person, they get free lunch, free breakfast, they get a free ride to school for the bus, school bus, and so forth. But with adult ed, they don't get very much incentive. So if there were opportunities where more collaboration with maybe schools, institutions, and companies, where maybe they supplied a gas card. If a student is able to, help them with a gas card so they can get to school. A lot of students Uber every day. That's expensive.
It is.
They're it's very expensive, Ubering every day, and then they come to, hungry. There's no meal plan for an adult and things like that. So if there were more ways to incentivize, maybe creating more vouchers. So if you think about even at the university levels, books are expensive. They're
Mm.
very expensive textbooks. So even if there were collaborations and partnerships with corporations and companies that would help, give vouchers for books for these college students. Because I remember when I was in university, I was spending at least $450 a term for
I feel
books.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, the term is only like what, 3-4 months, and now what am I gonna do with the book after I finish the class? Now I just got this big old, mile high book that I spent $200 on, and the course is over. So that's a major, and that's just for one course. So if there were, more partnerships to kind of help offset, even if it were for registration fees for enrollments and things like that, there are a lot of ways that there can be more support for these adult students, supporting them and encouraging them, and even more counseling services,
Mm.
helping them, creating courses. And that would be a major thing that I really am trying to get into, where more institutions will allow me to come in and do some workshops on how to study. They enroll and you expect them to study so that they can do well, but no one says, how do you do it?
Yeah.
How do I juggle being, a mom, a dad, a student, an employee? How am I going to manage all of these things? No one explains these things. You just register and you just jump in head first, but no one helps you navigate and manage that. And that's why the dropout rates are not always the best, because they aren't given the other tools they need to be successful.
Very true. It's almost like, here in Australia, I know America has a lot of these, like for the startup and scale up communities, there's always like those hubs that attach themselves to other like bigger organizations. I know here in Australia, like they have hubs for students who want to take entrepreneurship as like a unit itself, right? I wonder if there's something where like it can be part of like, like a hub under like, like Smart Kydd Hub or something like that, where it helps them that transition part. Because you're right, because it's like it's very from what I can see is very disjointed. Like it's like here, you get thrown to deep end, go figure out yourself. But versus like maybe having some sort of bridge, and the way I see maybe what you're doing is like it's like a bridge, because it's
Yeah.
like there's lack of awareness for adult educators, like said. There's lack of support for adult students who are trying to like reshape their lives or trying to get better in their lives or careers. One of them is like maybe like any like institutions like colleges or universities in America where they can, open up and draw funding from like an outside investor, create like a hub, something like that, where like they can help support these kind of things. That way is like, I mean, doing stuff online, doing stuff maybe in your own spot is great, but like if you can expand it further to other cities, other states, it'd be like, I think it'd be wonderful actually.
So the thing is with a lot of these things is like if there are programs, they're usually in-house in that institution and they're not and a lot of students don't know where they are. They don't know how to access them. They don't know where they exist, if they exist. And so forth. And so what I started doing a part of with Smart Kydd Concepts is I create content online because I see the need. I'm trying to fill the need. So for example, how to study. One of the things that I noticed with my students was they didn't study long enough. They were studying, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, which really isn't effective. So I created a video that's specifically for studying. There's a 1 hour video and a 2 hour video. And the whole point is that you put this video on and you're meant to study until the video goes off. In the midst of the video, it has study tips, how to take notes, how to come up with a study plan, and even like what snacks are good to eat while you're studying, strategies for reading and math and things like that. So trying to create content available for anyone who, on my YouTube channel, and they can go on there and find out how to network, how to collaborate, how to speak effectively, how to, all of these things how to study, even how to get rest, because that's important. You need to rest properly if you're now studying, because if you're not resting well, you're not retaining the information properly. So these are the types of topics that we're creating content and sharing with people on social media. Because people say, well, can you show me how to do that? Can you explain that? And that's really what we're doing, is trying to provide that resource. So even it doesn't matter what school you go to, you could always just go to, the YouTube channel and watch a little resource on how to study, how to, even if you're trying to change careers, how do I even network, these types of things, because no one is really taking the time to show you, unless maybe you're in a particular institution. And then the question becomes, what about everybody else?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking out loud here because like it's interesting. I have a friend of mine here. She's a psychologist, runs her own clinic, and she's really good. But as like, she's in one spot location, stuck with one location, right? And maybe she doesn't want to expend too much because like fees and everything. But she and I were just having a chat the other day. She said maybe like she can create some sort of directory, like because I see your like with your YouTube videos and content, you're giving the skills, but then I think I see things more visually. One, if you can
Hmm.
create some directories to other institutions or other like colleges or programs where if the people who want to know yourself, because I know you do book tours as well, they come to you in person. They come maybe come online depending on time zones or whatever it is. One maybe in the future like you can also create like a directory. It may not be the like no not it may not have you hands on 100% for the whole thing, but you can almost like filter through who you want to have on a directory. Like I trust this person in this other city to take on the concept of Smart Kydd kind of thing. And that way, like people feel more like, yeah, maybe they find like, it's too far to travel or there's a different city again, a different state. It'd be a lot more like, hey, at least we're getting this something similar or the same level, but just a bit further away, etc.
Yeah, I do webinars as well, so people can join me live. So even, from no matter where they are, they can be able to connect with me, and I talk a lot about motivation, and how to kind of get back into the flow of going back to school, how to deal with the pressures of, in my book, Go Back to School and Get Better. I talk about the dream killers. And these are the people who are supposed to be your biggest supporters. They're your parents, they're your children, they're your significant others and so forth. And instead of them, cheering you on and supporting you the way that you would think they would, they're actually the ones who are holding you back.
Mm,
And I've had many, many students over the years who it's their boyfriend and their girlfriend who
yeah.
is their hindrance. It is their parents who wants them to go to school for one thing, but they want to go to school for something else. So now the parent doesn't want to support them on a different, path, and, different things like that. And so I create these webinars where people can join live and get that inspiration, ask those questions, and get those tips and that advice, because some people just don't know where to turn,
True.
and they don't
But
know who to
yeah.
trust.
Yeah. Now I'm just thinking because like I like that part, but sometimes there's a saying that motivation and inspiration there's does not last forever because there needs to be some sort of like habitual identity and everything there as well. It's more like how to set up the environment in different locations or different areas better. So like if like say I'm just thinking out loud here, like if you were to visit the library and you have a point of contact that's tied with Chandra Kydd, that person, maybe they go watch a webinar, it's fantastic, they get inspired, they won't get studying, but and then they go to that, say, the library. Sometimes you get a pumped up motivation. It's happened to me back before in the past. But you walk into a new environment, you get cold feet, and people kind of give you, like, cold shoulders and everything. You kind of, the whole motivation like dissipates. But having like some sort of, I guess, looking like more like a network, or like a map of like trusted advisors, I guess, and like, this link to you. That way it's like, hey, this webinar is done. If you're in this city or this like location, check out this place. That person knows me. I know that person. They'll take care of you as well. That way it makes it easy for them to transition, because after the webinar is done, it's like, great. Like, I know what to do, but at the same time, like, I'm feeling a bit scared when I rock up to this big building or whatever it is. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking out loud here. Yeah.
Right, right, right. No, no, I get you. And honestly, that's a fantabulous job, of an idea to kind of create that network, as you say, that network of people who can continue to provide that continual support. And so what I try to do is I try to give them some skills and some tools that they could take with them wherever they go to whatever new environment. Because not everybody sees everything the way I see everything. I am so, like I say, I'm so big on, like, encouragement, motivation, and, loving on folks, and whereas other people are like skill, 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 skill. Skill and drill, skill and drill, skill and drill. And even just the fact of certain institutions like to do things more online based, and not, they want to, have students that are just online all the time. And I'm like, even with that, there still needs to be connection. So even if I am taking a course online, is there going to be much interaction with the instructor and things like that, where they feel like they have a physical or a connection with their teacher who cares about them as an individual beyond the coursework. So these are a great idea. And so finding these networks I think that's the challenge, but it is definitely doable. And I'm sure that there are other folks out there with a similar mindset. It's just finding them and making those connections and having that commitment, because once you start that partnership, you want it to last and be a long term. So that way it really does benefit the students for a long term. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I'm
that's a
just
great
thinking
idea.
like,
That's a great idea. No, but that's a really great idea, because it's good to have more than one person that can support both.
yeah, it's like almost like a movement to get it itself there as well. Like, I have an idea that I'm putting together for a product, actually. And when
Hmm.
I talk to some people, basically it's more for operational efficiency in small, medium-sized enterprises and above. And some might like it's good having some good context, give me some harsh feedback and everything. Some people's like, but this company is $1 billion company, or this industry is going this direction for so long. Are you going to try to change their minds? And then I heard from somebody else saying, like, you're not trying to change their minds, you're trying to set up your own movement. And of course, then within those larger organizations, there's always going to be somebody or a few handful where they're like kind of fed up with what the systems are doing currently. So they
Hmm.
might jump to your side. I'm just thinking out loud here, maybe like start like a movement or something there. That way people align to what you value, feeding your students as well. Once like, you can say like big criteria is like you must feed your students, and of course like sit down with them. You can't just do things online all the time, that kind of thing, right? So
Right,
that
right.
because a lot of people say like, oh, I can't challenge the current like education system, but like you're not trying to challenge it or rebel, or you're trying to rebel, but you're trying to just do your own thing, go on your own path, and whoever wants to follow. And eventually there's some people in those other like institutions or like ecosystems where they kind of fed up or kind of getting a bit like desensitized of like why things are the way they are. And then when they see somebody else come up with a new movement, they go on to check it out and maybe potentially follow and support the movement as well.
Yeah, I think that kind of is a little bit of my story, why I kind of, created Smart Kid Concepts, is because I saw a need, and I wanted to fill a need. But then when you're dealing with certain educational institutions and so forth, there is a box, and you must stay within the box. You can color outside the lines. And that may be, the materials that you use. You can use these, but you can't use these. You can talk about this, but you can't talk about that. You can teach this way, but you can't teach that way. And so there's so much restriction, and so and not even being willing to think outside of the box. Well, this is the way we've done it for the last 50 years. So we're not trying to do anything new. So, and I'm the kind of person that I am so always wanting to be outside the box. I always want to try something new. And so it gets frustrating as a person who's forward thinking, who wants to, just not, forget outside the box. Let's blow the box up, you know. Put it in a bag, forget the box, put it in a bag, or let's get rid of all of the restrictions and the constraints, and let's do what's simply best for the students. And so when you kind of get that pushback, and it gets frustrating at times. So I said, you know what, let me kind of do, what I want to do, how I want to do it. And that's kind of what Smart Kydd Concepts it is. It's like me being able to, be myself without limit.
Mm.
To see the need that students need these soft skills, to see that students need, encouragement in digital literacy without, I don't have to wait to get approved to be able to teach these things. I don't have to wait for someone's permission to be able to discuss and have certain workshops about certain topics. I have the freedom to do so. And people are like constantly, messaging me, thank you for that. I appreciated that. I really enjoyed that. I needed that. No one ever said it to me that way. No one ever showed it to me that way. And now I see the value. And that feels good because now I really see the true benefits of what I'm doing. And I know people are really excited about it, and I don't have constraints. And that's the thing about schools. You gotta stay within the box because there's a box. Somebody created it, and you just stay in the box. And at
Yeah.
the same time, times are changing rapidly. So the box needs to change. Maybe the color of the box, the size of the box, the walls of the box, the material the box is made out of. Things need to shift and change as life is shifting and changing. And I
Mm.
don't think the changes are happening fast enough to keep up with what's happening in the world.
I think that's interesting. It reminds me of like a story I think of somewhere. I can't remember the whole thing, but basically is that this, large corporation company, they wanted to buy out a family farm of banana growers. And so like I think there's a river between like where the family's farm is to where they need to go to the town to sell the bananas or distribute the bananas. So the large like corporation I think they bought the rights to the river or something, or bought the rights to, they're the only company that can have a bridge, deliver the fruits back and forth between the farms and stuff like that. So the guy, like initially the staff members of the family farm was like, oh, we're screwed now, basically. And
Hmm.
then what happened was like the guys like, they say we can't build a bridge, so I'm going to build like half a bridge on both sides, and then use a boat to transfer the fruits across and everything. And then the corporation, the lawyers, and the guys like, we're going to sue this person. But then I think the government goes, but it's not a bridge. It's two like what a pier, what do you call it? It's two like little like what's the word I'm looking for?
Almost like a little, like a pier, like a jetty.
A pier, yeah, jetty with a boat transferring the bananas across. So his business still grew very well. It's a good story. If I probably send it to you later on, but that's kind of like thinking like outside outside the box, within the box, I guess,
Right, right,
You're still within the institutions like rules, legal laws, policies, but you're doing things a little different that doesn't um disrupt or falls under any particular category. That way, like, you can see things change from there as well.
right, right. So in other words, like he sees a need and he wants to fill a need without breaking the rule,
Yeah,
but still managing to solve a problem.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But it seems weird, or at least sad, that this individual has to be afraid to come up with a solution. And I think that's really a hard reality, is the fact that now that we now have the bridge, right? Plus this little connection that we'll call it a connector, right? This
yeah.
transfer station, they're solving a problem because now you can move twice as much product, right? Because now you have two ways. So, but no one's seeing it as a solution to an issue. They're seeing it as he's being a troublemaker
Exactly.
because he's trying to break a rule. And so that's the hard part, is when you are thinking outside of the box, because people want you to stay in the box, and you're teetering the lines, and you're coming up with other, and so you got to be so careful with that you don't want to upset the wrong folks and stuff like that. At the end of the day, isn't everybody winning when they're coming up with these solutions to these problems?
Yeah, but those guys at top, those ones control, that kind of thing. But that's a good story. I'll try to find it and send it to you later on. It's really good. But yeah, but like I guess just being aware for time, like for another remainder of 2025, we're nearly halfway there. It's crazy. Like what what projects are you focused on right now for this year?
Right now, I'm actually going into, planning to go on some university and college tours. That's the focus right now.
Nice.
To try to get on some college campuses because there are a lot of college students who are they need guidance too. They need help because same scenario, like you jump in, right? You apply, you get accepted to college. You leave mom and dad's home and you go to this place and you're now a roommate. You weren't a roommate before. You were a resident in a household. You have to pay expenses. Before
Mm,
mom and dad paid all of your expenses, you now go to class and now you have this newfound freedom. So now you might be navigating dating for the first time really because you don't have your parents on your back. Oh, and now you're making choices and you're learning to adult and no one is navigating and helping you and even helping you to understand that you're going to make mistakes along the way. But how do you still stay focused and get that credential, that degree? How do you still make sure that you're doing what you came there to do while you're still learning who you are, learning this new journey, learning this freedom as a new college student? So that's really a lot of what we're shifting and pivoting in, talking and focusing on getting on college campuses and helping these young people on college campuses to navigate now that you're out the house, right? And what is your plan? And even once you finish and get your degree, what's the plan? Are we going to go back to mom and dad's house or do we have a strategy here?
mm.
Or, this is no one's, what do we do with these young folks? And so they need guidance, they need help, they need motivation and strategies to help them navigate the mistakes that they're going to make while they're in college. Because I think about it, when I was in college, I made a lot of mistakes. Then
We all
because I
make
made
there.
mistakes, yeah, we make mistakes and then we're embarrassed and we don't tell anybody. And we hope no one finds out. And hopefully they're not so much to the point where it doesn't destroy our lives. But if we don't know how to navigate them, it can. So that's where we're headed now. We're trying to get on college campuses and to do more speaking with college students because that too is adult ed. That's adult ed. That's the same audience that we're dealing with and so forth. And then getting into writing more of my books because I'm gonna have a series.
Nice. That sounds
Yeah.
exciting. Now, really cool to hear what you're doing actually, Chandra, and I'm so glad we had this conversation as well. Where can our listeners find you best?
So my website is www.smartkyddconcepts.com. That's www.smartkydd.concepts.com. Or I also have Facebook. They could find my name, Chandra Kydd, ChandrakYdd. And also I have Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Now the TikTok, I call them the TikTokers. That TikTok and ooh, they're a tough crowd. I love those TikTokers, but I do have a TikTok page and we're sharing a lot of resources on TikTok that are really motivational, specifically gearing towards our younger college crowd on TikTok, giving them motivational quotes and resources to help them along as they're kind of figuring it out on their journey.
Very nice. And then we'll definitely leave those in the show notes. But Chandra, thank you so much for your time. We'll call it for
Thank
today
you.
for this pod. And we can always touch base maybe then in 6 to 12 months to see what's new been happening from your side.
That would be great. That sounds perfect because then I could tell you all about some of these college tours and the other books that I've added to my Get Better series.
Fantastic. This episode is brought to you by Prosperum Digital. Why do so many business owners and decision makers try to upgrade their business, but nothing actually changes? Instead, it creates more headaches, more bureaucracy, and more revenue leaking through the cracks. I'm building something different. Not another software, not another CRM or project management dashboard tool or some overpriced consultant. Called Emetra, an operational efficiency and intelligence system that shows you exactly how your business runs, not how you think it does. It maps out your workflows, spots a friction, and gives you real-time feedback with data to accurate precision, not politics. Imagine having a bird's eye view or an ability to see your entire business from A to Z without any blind spots. This is not just software, it's a truth engine. This hits at home. Check out the link below for early access at prosperumdigital.com.au/Emetra early access, or just click on the link in the show notes below.